It's time for the RealAg Roundtable with Sean Haney and Lindsay Smith.
All right, we're here with Mike Reimer, Acting Executive Director with the Manitoba Pulse Growers Association, and we are going to talk about soybeans, specifically soybeans in Manitoba. We are here at the end of, or approaching the end of the soybean harvest in Manitoba. Any feel for yields, quality, and acres this year?
Yeah, so I think everything is looking pretty good. I think their early maturing varieties yields were in that 20, 25, 30 bushel an acre range, a little bit of some variability there. Mm-hmm. As we've seen some of the longer season varieties coming off, we're seeing yields, up 30, 35, mm-hmm. 40 bushels an acre. So it looks like once everything is said and done, we're going to be looking at about an average of 30 bushels an acre.
Okay. And how does that, let's say 5-year average, how does that slide in?
It would be pretty good. It's certainly not below average, so I don't think it's anything to complain about. We definitely could have benefited from a rain, mm-hmm. Sort of in that scorching part of the summer. And I think that what we're seeing and why some of the later maturing varieties are maybe doing better is because there were a couple late rains that they maybe benefited from. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, all in all, it's certainly not a disappointing crop at all, and I think everyone's pretty happy in general. I know there was a frost on around the 14th or 15th of September. Mm-hmm. Didn't seem to do any damage, which was good. So, harvest really went along smoothly. There weren't very many issues. Certainly not hearing anything as far as any quality issues. So mm-hmm. all in all, it's been a pretty good year.
And I've heard 800,000 acres. 840, 860, 900,000 acres I've heard thrown out for 2012. Where do you think they ended up this year?
So the number that we get, that is an estimate, I need mm-hmm. to make sure that's an estimate, but from Manitoba Agricultural Services, mm-hmm. Their number is about 844,000 660. So it's probably it could be in that. I would say anywhere from 840 to 860. It's in that range.
Somewhere in there. So then the big story, or with how soybeans have done quite well, and certainly I saw them this summer up past Balmoral, mm-hmm. if you can believe it, that far north. They're obviously east to Beausejour. Obviously the Red River Valley has adopted them full on. There's talk of 1 million acres in 2013 or somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. Do you think we can get there? I mean, obviously we have expanded the geographical area, mm-hmm. but are there any hang-ups, do you think, to getting to 1 million acres? Will we see that next year?
I mean, I think it's completely possible. Again, you never know what's going to happen, but from everything that I've heard, I think there's a lot of interest in soybeans right now, and mm-hmm. I think it's possible. So yeah, I mean 1 million acres I don't think is unrealistic by any stretch.
Do you think, is there seed for that, do you think?
Yeah, I think the thing is, what's happening is you're really seeing people gearing up for sort of this push of soybeans mm-hmm. Out west. So I know this year, especially with this year, I know there was some talk of some seed shortage issues. Never seemed to really be much of an issue. So I think we should be okay for next year because this year especially, I think everyone's, really on the lookout for soybeans. So everyone's gearing up for that a little earlier this year.
Obviously, I mean, you mentioned short season, long season. Is really that the season length, is that really still the biggest breeding hurdle to wider adoption of soybeans in Manitoba, even further west?
It's certainly one of the biggest, and so typically, in Eastern Canada and the U.S., they talk about heat units. Mm-hmm. Manitoba, if you look at our seed guide, it's days to maturity, so it's based on Czech variety NCS portage, and then basically anything within 3 days of that is considered mid-range, and that's probably when you look at the top varieties, most of them would be in that mid range.
Okay.
And then if anything, less than 3 to 6 days, that's short. And again, that's a lot of popularity. And these are the varieties as we do move out. Really, those are the varieties that people need to be looking at for the first time. It's sometimes tempting to go with the longer growing seed varieties because typically they're yielding a little better.
Yes.
And the same thing, it's a pretty big risk, especially if it's a first time soybean grower to go that way. So I think most producers they're doing their due diligence and they're looking for information, and they want to make sure that they are making that correct variety selection. So.
It is always tempting to chase the high yields.
Well,
a crop with low yields is better than no crop.
That's right.
Or lower yields, I guess. The one question that is being bandied about is as soybeans move into rotation, it's obviously replacing some things. That's not necessarily a bad thing per se, in that there are likely some farmers out there that could use some breathing room in their rotations for agronomic reasons. Are you finding, especially, let's maybe talk in the Red River Valley, are edible beans losing out? Is it just another option? Kind of what's the dynamic there?
Yeah, I certainly think we are losing some edible bean acres to soybeans. And then also, you look at the way things are changing in Manitoba with more winter wheat, perhaps less spring wheat. There's a lot of canola last year, and certainly, there's some questions over whether, perhaps even the Red River Valley is the best place to be growing to canola. Right. So, I don't think it's necessarily going to be one crop that these new acres are going to displace, but, I think, among all the commodity groups, basically, the more option that producers have, the better off everyone is. So I think those acres, like I said, are going to be sort of dispersed evenly, and there's not going to be necessarily one crop that gets that loses out.
I think it depends on area, because certainly, I've spoken with some farmers maybe a little further west that have definitely phased flax out of their operation and are having some good success with soybean. But then in other areas that didn't grow flax, they might be swapping out edible beans or something like that. So it really is going to depend on where you are.
If you look at Manitoba, it does, the growing conditions in the Red River Valley compared more to the western side of the province are quite different. So certainly, there's going to be different crops grown in those areas,
Any advice for farmers, let's say, that are, I'm sure there must be farmers every year that are trying them for the first time, even though, soybeans have been gaining popularity over the past 10 years. Any advice for the first time out, someone who wants to try them in Manitoba, Saskatchewan?
The biggest thing is just, do your due diligence. There's a lot of great opportunities to get out and get some more information. I know we have a special crop symposium in February, as well as there's a soybean production day in Brandon. These are great things to get out to and get an opportunity to ask the questions you need to ask. You can always look at the Manitoba Seed Guide as well. You look at the different site locations that are used for the trials, see what varieties are doing well, and certainly if you are a first time user, obviously the best option is to avoid temptation and chasing the big yielding varieties, and maybe stick with something that's that is has a shorter maturity period, but likely going to get in there safely, and you're not going to be too concerned about early frosts or anything.
On the equipment side, just about, realistically, any planter or seeder is going to do a decent job when you're just trying it out. What about headers on the combine? Anything special?
No, typical. Flex headers, and it's interesting. There are some new varieties come out that have the pods a little higher, so that might even allow a little more flexibility, which is always a big advantage. There is a lot of research going on right now, solid seeded versus planter, and either way you're going to do okay. I think as guys get more comfortable with it and they want to get a little more sophisticated, they are moving to planters and really experimenting with row spacing and this type of thing. So either way, I think they'll be okay. And like I said, as guys become more comfortable, they start, trying different things. And
Okay. Thanks, Mike.
yeah, thank you.